And we are live.
And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care. Go check out their website, se-ortho.com. And we always appreciate the continued support of the Gator Bytes podcast from Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. You presumably are Florida Gator fans getting ready for a gigantic college basketball game tomorrow as the number 6 ranked Gators head to the Plains to take on the number 1 ranked Auburn Tigers. Graham, I don't know if you've seen this. I think the cheapest standing room only seats at Auburn tomorrow that are still available are still going for like $275. Needless
More
to
than that.
say, they are fired up for Florida and Auburn tomorrow out on the plains.
It's more than that, dude. Because I took a peek at going with one of my buddies. Let's see here. I have it fresh on the search. Okay. This is great podcasting for this to pop up. Um, I see $317
Wow.
for the
Wow.
cheapest,
Good
and
for
and
them.
that's standing room only. The cheapest to actually like have a seat to sit down in is that's section 211. I'm gonna assume that's up in the nosebleeds. Is $481.
Well, needless to say, Auburn fans are going to be fired up. Florida's probably going into a hornet's nest. I'll say this about the Gators, though. We haven't talked in a couple of weeks. They did what we told them to do, right? You beat South Carolina, you beat Texas, you beat Vanderbilt. We'll get to that game in a moment. Tennessee was a disaster. They couldn't throw the ball in the ocean from the beach. I mean, it was one of the worst shooting performances for Gator basketball in a long time. But you talk about the strength of resume and the strength of what they've done to get absolutely destroyed like that on national television and only fall one spot in the poll. They went from 5 to 6. I think speaks volumes to what the voting public, if you will, thinks of what the Gators have done to this point.
I think Walter Clayton turning his ankle may have helped the narrative a little bit with that because I think if you a lot of the voters that probably didn't watch that entire game probably saw, oh well, Walter Clayton got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the truth is, if Walter Clayton was fully healthy, they were still going to lose that game relatively convincingly. The
Yeah,
way
when
that
Walter
game was
Clayton
going.
was out there, they were getting crushed too.
Yeah,
So
but I think if you didn't watch a lot of that game and you just heard he got hurt, then you'd reasonably assume, well, of course they lost by double digits because their best player was out, which makes sense. I mean, it got worse once he was out of the game, but they weren't going to win that game, I don't think.
my
Uh,
dog is going nuts.
your dog agrees with my statement. So here's my thing, Hack. Tell me your opinions on this with Walter Clayton's ankle. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what his ankle looks like. Maybe his ankle looks fantastic and he's 100% healthy and ready to go. And if that's the case, awesome. But assuming his ankle is like 95% of turned ankles, those things take like 2 to 3 weeks to heal, fully
Mm-hmm.
heal. Heal in terms of not heal in terms of enough to where he can get back out there and play, but heal enough in terms of it's not reasonable to assume that he's probably going to turn it the minute he steps wrong again. Understanding that, Hack, I don't think Florida has much of a chance. I heard Hayes Carline say yesterday on the Frangie show. He said that Joakim Noah could come back and they're still probably not going to win that game. So, and I tend to agree. I would still sit him, man. I wouldn't try to rush him back for this game, and I'm really not interested in Walt turning his ankle again and the Gators losing by 8
Yeah.
for and then he's turned his ankle for no reason. I would keep him out until that thing is healthy, even if it means Florida bumps down to, even if it means they lose another game or two that maybe they wouldn't otherwise if he was in. If they're a 3 seed, but Walter Clayton has 2 legs, that's better than making themselves a 2. They're not going to be a 1 seed at this point, I don't think. Maybe being a 2 seed, but his ankle's all jacked up.
Well, to that point, I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, March is much more important than February. But that's why I thought the Vanderbilt win was so important because you don't want to lose like 3 or 4 games in a row. That starts a domino effect a little bit. And without Walter Clayton, look, that was pretty hairy there for a while. I mean, they're losing at home to Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt's not chopped liver. I mean, they were unranked, but they were 16-5. I mean, they had victories over Tennessee and Kentucky. I mean, that was a good Vanderbilt team that was beating
They're
you
very
at the half.
Missouri-ish.
Yeah, very Missouri, right? Very Missouri-ish. And Florida came out there and just dominated in the second half without Walter Clayton. I love to see that. So from that standpoint, I think the Vanderbilt win kind of buys Walter Clayton some time. Again, I wasn't interested in losing 3, 4, 5 games in a row, but I agree. I think with a healthy Walter Clayton going into Auburn tomorrow and winning is probably a tough task anyway. Maybe if he doesn't play tomorrow, he's healthy enough to play in Starkville against another ranked road game against Mississippi State. But yeah, I agree. If he is not 100% stamped approval of every doctor on that staff, I'm not playing him in February on February 8th so that in March 8th he'll be 100% healthy.
Well, especially because you and I both watched the game. Like, of course, in the second half, to your point, it was really more like the second half of the second half that Florida really started pulling away from Vandy. They hit a couple of big threes and the lead started to become it went from like one possession to 3 to 4 pretty quickly with some threes, and that was kind of all she wrote with like 10, 11 minutes left, something like that. But you're right. Before that, it was a struggle, and I believe, Hack, that it was more of an illumination and an eye-opening tale of what this team looks like without Walter Clayton, and I don't love it. It's not awesome. It's not a great product to watch. Now again, they were at home and they hit a couple of big shots and they were able to put a lesser opponent away. But there's real concerns when he's not out on the floor.
Yeah, and I heard you talk with Denmark about that, I think, or I heard you say that somewhere else. And I don't disagree with you. I guess my response to that would be, and I don't know the national game enough as far as the best players on each team, but Walter Clayton's the best player on the Gator basketball team. If you take the best player if you take Cooper Flagg off of Duke, right? Or if you take the best player off of Auburn, or if you take the best player off of any team in the top 10, top 15, I'm going to guesstimate that that's probably not going to look very pretty either, right? I don't
If
think that's just centralized to Florida. I mean, if any team loses their best player, it's going to affect them.
correct, if Janai Broom
Right.
were to have been sidelined for the season after the first game of the year, Auburn's not the number one team in the country with only one loss right
Sure.
now.
Yeah.
I agree with you. My whole point I was making is it's very clear that whatever level they are when Walter Clayton plays, they are a significant step down, if not multiple steps down when he's not out there. And to me, my whole point I was making on that was that just shows me that I need to have him in March more than ever.
Yeah.
And to your whole point, like, because I think it, like, some people might have watched the Vanderbilt game and thought, wow, they're really struggling. They got to get Clayton back as soon as they can. My whole point was I think it's the opposite. I think it's so clear how badly they need him in March that I'm not interested in putting him back out there just to have him turn the ankle again.
Right. No,
And
yeah, real quick, I agree with that. Now, again, like you said, we're not doctors. He could be 100%. Now, if he's 100%, he needs to play. 95%, and then we get into semantics a little bit. But no, I agree. If he's not 95, 100%, then you sit him. But if he's good to go tomorrow, he needs to be out there.
here's the other issue with his ankle not being right basketball wise, Hack. We know he's their best player. He's an average at best defender when he's fully healthy. And he's not very big. When he has one leg, I mean, if any team you play that has guards with a microcosm of explosion, they're going to hunt him like nobody's business. Why wouldn't you? Of
Yeah.
course you would. Again, he's an average defender to begin with, much less with a bad ankle. So, and look, I think too, Hack, here's the thing. Um, this could be, if they use it correctly and certain guys do what they need to do, this could be a blessing when it's all said and done for the Gators. And here's what I mean. When Walt plays and all the other guys are playing, when Walter's out there, Elijah Martin's out there, Will Richard, and you have Denzel Aberdeen coming off the bench, guys like Urban Klavzar and and Isaiah Brown, they don't really get on the floor in meaningful moments. When he's out, they got to try to find somebody else that can get some minutes. I think with Klavzar especially, we're talking about bad defenders. I mean, he's not a good defender, but he is such a pure shooter. It is very clear the ball moves differently when he's on the floor. When he's on the floor and he posts up in a corner, and the defense they're playing has seen him on film and can see what type of shooter he is, Florida gets to play 4-on-4 offense. If you can figure out a way to work him in the rotation and give you 5 to 10 minutes of good basketball a game, and then you get Clayton back with a shooter like that, Florida could potentially raise their ceiling even higher to what we've seen that we've seen to this point.
No, I think it's a good point, and I agree. People need to step up in the absence of Clayton. The question is, how do you beat Auburn tomorrow? We'll get into that in a moment. Southeast Orthopedic Specialist brings you Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast, as we always are, on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Again, this Gator podcast is brought to you by our friends at Southeast Orthopedic Specialist. You can check out the good Dr. Kevin Murphy every Thursday morning on the drill with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in the world of sports. I think if Walter Clayton does not play tomorrow, and maybe even if he does, but certainly if he doesn't, to me, how do you beat a bully? You got to become a bully yourself, right? I think Chinaloo, Condon, Howe, Alexis, I think this is their game tomorrow. You pound the ball inside, you make it a physical game. Because again, the refs are going to have a home whistle for Auburn. The crowd will be going nuts. Usually in situations like that, the shots probably won't fall as frequently as they do in other situations. This needs to be a nasty, physical, tough, rough game with the four bigs in the front court. To me, that's how you have the best chance to beat Auburn. Now, the problem is Auburn can play that way, no question about it. You're going to have to out physical and out tough Auburn on their home floor, which admittedly is easier said than done. Elijah Martin, too, for that matter. Elijah Martin, stick your nose in there, be physical with those guards. To me, make it dirty, make it sloppy, make it rugged. That's the best way for Florida to win tomorrow.
So this is the basketball version of run the ball, control clock.
Yeah, out physical them, and hopefully hopefully they get in foul trouble before you do.
Yeah, because Florida doesn't have the shooting on. If this was a different year where they had a little more shooting, then I would say the blueprint to trying to win this game is just let it fly and hope you get hot. But I probably agree with you because Florida is at their best, I think, when they do play some bully ball and then they turn that bully ball into some stops and some transition buckets. I think that's when Florida's at their very best. And obviously their very best includes Walter Clayton Jr., which they're not going to have, so they won't be at their very best regardless. It's going to take close to a miracle, Hack. And I think –
well, I agree Florida's the underdog, but let's keep in mind, Tennessee went in there and almost beat them. Probably should have beat them. Oklahoma was hanging with them for 30 minutes of that game a couple of nights ago. I mean, Auburn is not, the 92, 93 Bulls. I mean, you can go in there and you can hang with them. The problem is That crowd is a factor. I'll give him credit. Bruce Pearl's built something out there with that home court. I mean, it is a factor. And Auburn usually finds ways to win games in the last 5 or so minutes. But people have gone in there and they've hung with them for a while. Florida should be able to do that. If Florida gets boat raced by 20 or 30 tomorrow, I'm going to be upset because that should not happen.
That happened in Knoxville.
Well, yeah, because Florida literally couldn't hit anything. Now, right, if Florida goes in there and shoots the worst percentage in a decade, like they did against Tennessee, then yeah, then all signs are off at that point. But I'm assuming that won't happen twice in a 7-day stretch.
Would you play Urban Klavzar for 10 minutes a game at this point without Clayton?
I mean, without Clayton, yes. With Clayton, no. With Clayton, their 8-man rotation to me is perfect. It's what was working. But if Clayton's not out there, then yeah, I would give Klavzar some minutes.
Was their rotation perfect?
Their rotation got them to 18-2 or whatever it was. I mean,
I
18-2
agree
and number
that
5 in America.
what I mean by perfect is, can you win a championship with that rotation?
Well, again, I don't know that, but I do know and we talked about this the last time we were here. Can they stay healthy? And look, I'll tell you this. When Elijah Martin was going to the locker room against Vandy, I was like, oh no. The problem you have with Clayton being out is now one more injury to those guards, and you are in trouble. You're already in pretty significant trouble already. But heaven forbid if something were to happen to Martin or Richard while Clayton's out, then all bets are off. Is he
Speaking of
good enough
those
to
two,
go ahead?
speaking of Clayton and Richard, can I say something minorly maybe controversial about the two of them?
Oh man, I would love for you to do that.
They've not been good enough, bro.
In general or recently?
Recently. Not in general. They're both very good players. We know that. Will Richard figured it out late in that game against Vanderbilt. Bro, in a game where Elijah Martin got hurt in the first half and missed significant time in the first half, and in a game where Walter Clayton Jr. wasn't playing at all, Will Richard had 5 points at halftime.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Against Tennessee last Saturday, he shot the ball, what, twice?
That was ridiculous. I agree.
I mean, what are we doing? Are you serious? He's a senior guard, and he shot the ball twice?
Yeah, he's a senior guard, though, who's probably their third option when they're fully healthy. And you got to wrap your mind around
that. That's great, but he was the second option for most of that game because Walter Clayton Jr. was out. And you're telling me the second option as a guard should shoot the ball 2 times? No. And so my thing about Will Richard, and I've been on this Will Richard thing for a long time. I feel like I talk to walls when I do it because I feel like nobody agrees with me on this. He bothers me as a player, and he's a good player. He's good. I'm not trying to say Will Richard sucks. That's not the point of this. He reminds me, I compared him on Denmark and Marsh to Josh Hines Allen of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because he has games where he can't miss, and he's the best player on the floor. And it's normally in games when Florida's already playing well and probably would have won the game regardless. He certainly helped, but they probably would have won the game anyways. A lot of times it's games at home. A lot of times it's games where Florida wins by double digits. A lot of times he's shooting threes well. The South Carolina game beats my narrative on this because he went against the grain. He's the reason they won that game. I got to give him credit where it's due. But usually, for the most part, especially on the road, and in games where other guys for the Gators, maybe it's Condon, maybe it's Martin, maybe it's Clayton, aren't playing super well, it feels like he's never the guy that steps up and makes plays when other guys don't have it. Other guys do it. Martin, I've seen multiple times this year do it. Clayton, I've seen multiple times this year do it. Condon, I've seen do it. He's one guy where it'll be, 20 minutes into the game, it'll be halftime, and I'm like, where the hell is Will Richard? He hadn't done anything but sit in the corner. And he's played good defense. I know he's a good defender, but I'm speaking offensively.
Yeah, I like the Joshua Hines Allen comparison because, basically saying when he's on, he's terrific. It's just you need him to do that more often than he's doing it, and I agree with that.
And when he's on, it's normally in games that Florida's already playing really well.
Yeah.
There's games. It's like the Tennessee game is a great example because that was a game where again Clayton turned his ankle and Elijah Martin wasn't playing super well. It's like if there was ever a time for Will Richard to take over the reins and give you 25, which he's capable of doing, now's the time. Doesn't mean they would have won the game, but to help them be more competitive, we needed a performance out of him. And that bothers me. Elijah Martin, what bothers me about Elijah Martin, he has been ebbs and flows with him as well. Elijah Martin is a superb, exceptional athlete, right? I mean, that guy could probably make the football roster tomorrow. He is a freak of an athlete.
I think he and Walter Clayton both were like really good high school football players.
They were. Elijah, I think too often he gets in his head, okay, I'm a great athlete. I'm big, I'm strong, I'm explosive. I'm just going right into the rack. And that's good in a theory, right? He drives too often, it seems like, with no plan. Do you get what I'm saying? He'll get the ball outside the 3-point line, and he'll be like, all right, now's my time. I'm getting to the rack.
You mean he turns into Denzel Aberdeen?
Yeah, Denzel Aberdeen lives life with no plan.
That's all Denzel Aberdeen does.
I think Denzel Aberdeen gets in his car in the morning and puts it in drive with no plan.
Martin's been listening to Denzel Aberdeen too much, is what you're saying.
Right. But Elijah he'll get to like free throw line, he'll get to around the free throw line or right inside, and he'll pick up his dribble, and he just doesn't know. He doesn't know what to do with it. Right. He doesn't know if he's going to rise up and put up a shot. He doesn't know if he's going to pass it. He doesn't know if he's going to try to draw a foul. And more often than not, it either ends up in the ball getting tied up and it's a jump ball, or he makes some terrible errant pass that gets stolen and it ends up in easy transition buckets the other way. Earlier in the season, I didn't feel like he did that. You remember the Kentucky game? He was nails in the Kentucky game, especially late. He was the reason they still had a chance late in the game. He'd get to that free throw line area, but he would pull up right there with confidence, and he was hitting them. He needs to get back to that.
We got to go quick here because I'm a chaperone of a kindergarten field trip today. So that should be a lot of excitement for me. Really looking forward to that. I think both of us are picking Auburn tomorrow, correct?
Yeah. Auburn by double digits.
Oh, you think it's going to be a blowout?
Well, I don't mean, when I say double digits, I don't mean 30. But I think they win by 10.
Yeah.
85-75.
I think Florida has a much better showing than they did at Knoxville. Again, that's relative because in Knoxville was a disaster.
Even without Clayton?
Yeah, I do. Because I think for the last week they've been told how awful they were against Tennessee. I think they'll come out and they'll play hard. And again, Auburn is not this impenetrable force. I mean, they're good. They're very good. But again, Oklahoma, who is middle of the pack, can be in the SEC, for 30 minutes was right there. I think Auburn was up 4 on them with 10 minutes to go in the ball game.
Yeah.
So Florida should be able to hang around with Auburn. I don't think it's going to be a rout. Quickly, Southeast Orthopedic Specialist brings you Gator Bytes, 1010XL.com, Florida Gator, 1010XL Facebook page for the highest quality care. You can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for any orthopedic injury or concern. And we certainly appreciate Southeast Orthopedic Specialists and their continued support of the Gator Bytes podcast. Super Bowl on Sunday got a Gator flavor to it, got a Cocoa High School flavor to it. Some people may not know this. I remember the recruiting game for both of these guys. Jawan Taylor and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, former Florida Gators, were also former teammates at Cocoa High School in South Florida, which is kind of cool. From a Gator standpoint, do you care one way or the other for Jawan Taylor or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson getting a Lombardi trophy on Sunday?
In the time it took you to explain that, Jawan Taylor just false started twice.
Yeah, well, he lined up in the neutral zone as well. Lined up, off the line of scrimmage, yeah.
From a Gator perspective, no, I don't care. I want the Eagles to win because I'm sick of the Chiefs. So I guess I want Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to win. CJ Gardner-Johnson. Sorry, he's changed. That's the other thing. In the time it took you to explain, he changed his name again.
Yeah. Well, he
went from Chauncey Gardner to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to CJ Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think. Were those McElwain guys? They had to
In
be
terms of
McElwain guys.
recruits, in
Yeah,
terms of recruits,
internal recruits.
yes, yeah,
Because Jawan Taylor's been in the league for now for 6 years. Yeah, so those are McEl. Say what you will about McElwain, and he was horrific on the recruiting trail. But to land both of those guys was out of Coco was a pretty big get, right?
yeah. They were in the same class. Like I know they were teammates, but you said they were in the same class, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
That's class of. I didn't know Jawan specifically for class, but I know for a fact Chauncey, or CJ was class of, or he showed up to Florida in 2016 because that's the year I got there, and he was a freshman the year I was a freshman. I definitely remember that for a fact.
Yeah. So McElwain did work there on both of those
And remember,
guys.
Chauncey had an up and down career. He was good as a freshman, and then he really struggled as a sophomore. But the whole team was bad that year.
His
And
lasting
then
image. What do you think? Or C.J. Gardner Johnson's lasting image in Gainesville is? When you think of him in Florida, what do you think of?
I think of him in that bowl game against Michigan.
Okay,
That
interesting.
was
I'll
his
tell you,
last game. He had 2 picks and one for a touchdown. He went
that,
crazy in that game.
that
He was
surprised
Mr. He
me.
was Mr. Bowl game when he played for the Gators. Because remember, he had that great game against Iowa his freshman year.
Yeah. I think most people, maybe I'm wrong, but what I think of when I think of him is Doak Campbell Stadium with the
Yeah,
Seminole head
yeah.
celebrating the win over Florida State and in with the Gator crowd. I think people really appreciated
I
that
was
from
in
the
that
rivalry
crowd.
aspect. By the way, we got 2 minutes. Final thought. I don't know if you're going to apply for a Gator co-defensive coordinator position, but it seems they're hiring left and right. I mean, they got 3 defensive coordinators now, right? If the rumors about is it Bala from Washington, you got Sinceri, you got Roberts. How many defensive coordinators does one college football team need?
Um, well, apparently they need multiple, and they need multiple offensive line coaches, but they only need one play caller.
Yeah, it's
That's
interesting,
the part that
bizarre.
kills me. If Billy wants to do his thing and hire extra guy, like whatever, more power to him. That's fine. But you can't tell me you need 3 co-defensive coordinators, but you won't even entertain the thought of somebody else calling plays.
Yeah.
That's great. Granted, that we all knew, by the way. I'm sure you because you always say you like to live in reality. I like to live in reality as well. They were never going to hire an offensive coordinator. That was never going to happen. I think a lot of people just they allowed wishful thinking to blend into what was going to happen, and they convinced themselves that was going to be a real hire this offseason. That was not going to happen.
I think I saw the number. Guys that either left, got fired, got promoted, all the stuff that happened in college football at the OC position. I think the number is 46. There are going to be 46 new offensive coordinators in big time college football out of the 150 or whatever schools. Obviously, none of those 46 reside in Gainesville, which is interesting.
Look, man, it it removes any last shred of benefit of any doubt whatsoever. And Billy's going to live and die with him as the play caller, and that's fine. That's his prerogative. I would do it a different way. But if it works, it works. If it works and they win 8, 9 games and we move forward, then I won't complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
If they win 6 or 7 games, I'm going to complain about it.
No, I hear you. That's where we
But
are.
it's just like people really believe that a coach that finally started to figure it out toward the end of last season, finally for really his first time in 3 years, really gained some true traction and momentum and stacked multiple key wins together and got his prize quarterback commit on the field playing well all at once. Like that guy was all of a sudden going to hand off play calling duties. That was never going to happen.
No, but again, Florida, some expectations coming in with them. I've seen some way too early top 25s that have them, top 20, even top 15. And we'll obviously have a lot of time to talk about that. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. Thank you for watching and listening to Gator Bytes right here, 1010XL.com, the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. And again, thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for bringing it to you.